Ricky Lambert joining me. Some good news in response to this massive mouse plague that has been going through the Riverina and in some parts of Victoria too, but mainly the mice haven't got across the River Murray just quite yet, but they are coming in number and they are breeding in number elsewhere. But the good news this morning out of New South Wales.
Yeah, we've seen some alarming footage of mice swimming in the floodwaters as they moved through Western New South Wales, so they can swim and get across the Murray, so give it time. That's why we track it for listeners in Victoria and New South Wales, because if the New South Wales government can't help get on top of this, it's going to find its way into the Wimmera and other parts of Victoria. So they've just announced a support package of $50 million, which is going to help householders and farmers when it comes to getting rebates for the baits that they've purchased, but they're also going to treat your grain that you want to use to poison mice for free if you're a farmer.
Yes.
So it's a huge and significant support package, but the background to how this happened is really fascinating. We've got a situation where the New South Wales Farmers and the Country Women's Association went to Parliament House earlier this week in Sydney to host a showcase of exactly how bad this plague is, not just for farmers, but for farm households and people living in those regions when the mice are getting in their pantries and biting people and causing diseases and illnesses. And the government didn't show up. The Liberals and Nationals didn't show up, and a war of words eventuated. They ended up meeting with Agriculture Minister Adam Marshall later that day, but there's been a stoush with Deputy Premier John Barilaro accusing New South Wales farmers of playing politics. This was just yesterday, of playing politics and jumping in front of the cameras. Lo and behold, this morning, a $50 million support package emerges.
I think that the pressure that one brings to bear has to be done. And when New South Wales farmers turn up to ask for assistance and do a workshop on it, at the same time, the Country Women, a respected group through New South Wales, do likewise. There has to be an outcome from that. It just shows that lobbyists and lobby groups are important, and politics is played by usually the politicians, not the lobby groups, more to the point.
Well, on the lobby groups, we gave them a serve yesterday across the farming groups because they gave a big pat on the back for the federal budget, when I didn't think it was actually that flash for farmers. But in this case, they've gone direct to the Parliament with a delegation to make a point, and let's highlight the involvement of independents when it came to these people appearing before the Parliament. Helen Dalton, the member for Murray in New South Wales, and another independent were involved in staging that event. That's why the government's nose was out of joint, because independents were involved in staging that, and yet the outcome has been achieved. So sometimes there is value in considering your vote and who you support, because it can get you oxygen that you might not otherwise get if you just trust the government. And
of course, Broadacre farmers have also got the news that we brought you yesterday from the CSIRO about the doubling of the dose for the zinc phosphide, which is the baiting, the 25 milligram up to 50 milligram. And there are mouse management workshops for those in New South Wales for the webinar coming up on Friday the 14th of May. It's between 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. It can be logged into, and you can register online at the CSIRO or via the New South Wales government website. But Ricky, I think a good outcome in that it at least says the government is going to do something and is aware of it, but I think the baiting programs become absolutely crucial here, and the doubling of the dose I think is probably where even the $50 million is a good amount of money, but the doubling of the dose, not money, but actually the CSIRO response is probably where this is going to get it under control.
Well, it's a bit like the morning after a fight at the pub. Everyone's calmed down, and I think I'm struggling to get anyone to comment on the record today. The Agriculture Minister, New South Wales farmers, reached out to all of them for comment. No one seems to want to talk about it. And I think that's because, in the end, all's well that ends well. Never mind how we got to the point that $50 million's been rolled out. I think everyone wants to focus on it. Let's get it rolled out and help people out.
Yes. Have you had experience at one of those nighttime pub crawl things?
No, I'll just say, as a former lawyer, I have represented people in that context.
Oh dear, we won't go into any more of that here on the Flow Morning Show.